So when I hooked up with George and Parliament-Funkadelic, that gave me the license to go ahead and funk till you can't funk no more. You know, we were druggies, you know. By the time they came in, we were more about drugs than music, you know. And I knew that we were going down to save the consciousness of the funk, you know, because George was done. I mean, he was cooked, you know. The crack, he was cooked.
Bootsy Collins, the larger-than-life bass player of Parliament-Funkadelic, brought the world unforgettable funk grooves and a one-of-a-kind style.
Me, you know, it was like I went back to being with James Brown then, because...
But there was one band member, George Clinton, whom Bootsy Collins never forgave. Behind the wild hair and star-shaped glasses lay deep resentment, fueled by infighting, legal troubles, and struggles with addiction.
You know, like you tell me something, you know, and you know I believe in you, and then you turn around and do the opposite. So those are those same two things, the love and pain.
This is the story of why their relationship shattered and the impact it had on Bootsy's legendary career. The partnership between Bootsy Collins and George Clinton was one of the most exciting in funk history. It brought together two bold, restless minds whose mix of ideas didn't just stretch the limits of funk, it changed the sound and style of 1970s black music. Clinton's wild, spacey visions met Bootsy's explosive bass lines and fun-loving personality, creating a style no record label could have planned and no other band could copy. They first linked up in the early 1970s. Bootsy had just left James Brown's tightly run band, the JBs, and wanted something looser and more experimental. Clinton, already leading both Parliament and Funkadelic, saw Bootsy not just as a bassist, but as a performer who could bring P-Funk's out-of-this-world story to life.
The experience of going from James Brown to George, being able to do whatever I wanted to do.
From the start, Clinton encouraged Bootsy to go big not only in the music, but in the show. He told him to make the bass more than just background rhythm, using effects like envelope filters and phase shifters to make it a star of the sound. He also gave Bootsy freedom to invent wild stage characters. Bootzilla, the Player of the Year, the space bass avenger that became as famous as P-Funk's mothership. In return, Bootsy laid down grooves that anchored Clinton's wild, sprawling jams. Songs like Flashlight and Stretchin' Out, in a Rubber Band, were built on his deep, bouncing bass lines, showing that funk could be both loose and locked in at the same time. Together, they worked like architects of a whole new world, with Clinton drawing the cities in the sky, Bootsy building the beats people could dance on. But by the late 1970s, the machinery of P-Funk began to strain under its own weight. The demands of constant touring, mounting recording costs, and increasingly complex business entanglements took their toll. Key members like Fuzzy Haskins and Calvin Simon departed amid disputes over money and recognition. See Wikipedia on Fuzzy Haskins and Pitchfork coverage of the disputes. The loose family Clinton had built now felt like a revolving door. Bootsy stayed loyal longer than many, but the pressures pushed him to focus on his own spin-off project, Bootsy's Rubber Band, where he could maintain creative control and escape some of the chaos. Though still orbiting Clinton's world, he was charting a funk galaxy of his own. By the mid-1980s, they weren't working together much anymore. Each was focused on his own projects, and both were dealing with the downfall of the P-Funk empire. Still, their shared history kept pulling them back. In the 1990s, they teamed up again for concerts and recording sessions, and their chemistry felt just like old times. Even in the 2000s, fans could see them on stage together, Bootsy wearing sparkly shades, Clinton with his rainbow-colored dreadlocks, showing that the fire they started in funk was still alive. Their friendship had its ups and downs, but it was built on respect. They both knew they had made music history together. That truth lasted longer than any argument, contract fight, or time apart. By the late 1970s, the close family George Clinton had created was falling apart. Some members said money was missing, royalties weren't clear, and important decisions were made without everyone. The feeling of working together was being replaced by business problems. In 1977, things came to a breaking point. 3 original members, Clarence "Fuzzy" Haskins, Calvin Simon, and Grady Thomas, quit. Haskins had been there since the group's early doo-wop days, so his leaving showed the problems were serious. Calvin Simon later said it was about bad management, money issues, and losing trust in Clinton. See Wikipedia on Calvin Simon and Pitchfork obituary. The split didn't end the fight. In 1981, Haskins, Simon, and Thomas got back together and released Connections and Disconnections under the Funkadelic name. This led to a court battle over who could use the name. See Wikipedia on Fuzzy Haskins and the Connections and Disconnections entry. Clinton kept the main Funkadelic brand, but the fight left hard feelings that never went away. For Bootsy Collins, these departures were like losing pieces of the band's DNA. He stayed in Clinton's orbit, driven by loyalty and creative chemistry, but he could feel the shift on stage and in the studio. New players filled the gaps, but the grooves felt different, less like a family jam and more like a professional gig. The Mothership, which was a centerpiece stage prop used by Clinton and his multiple bands during their live concert performances, still landed at concerts, but to Bootsy, it didn't carry quite the same energy. As the 1980s rolled in, the turbulence intensified. Facing mounting legal pressure, Clinton consolidated the live act under the banner P-Funk All-Stars, a move that allowed the music to continue but underscored the fractured state of the organization. See Wikipedia on Parliament-Funkadelic legal disputes. For Bootsy, the change was both liberating and sobering. He was still one of the most visible and inventive members, but the backstage atmosphere had shifted from free-flowing creativity to guarded business maneuvering. The cosmic brotherhood of the early 70s was now a tightrope walk over a legal and financial minefield. That shift would push him, slowly but surely, toward focusing on his own projects, spaces where the groove could flow without the weight of courtrooms and contracts hanging overhead. Bootsy Collins' journey into funk legend status began far from the neon lights of P-Funk's mothership. Born in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1951, he grew up in a working-class neighborhood where music wasn't just entertainment, it was an escape hatch. Cincinnati in the 1960s had its own thriving local music circuit, shaped by the overlapping sounds of blues, gospel, R&B, and the earliest stirrings of funk. For young Bootsy, the bass guitar wasn't just an instrument, it was a tool to carve out a new reality. Alongside his older brother, guitarist Phelps "Catfish" Collins, who is now late, Bootsy spent his teenage years hustling gigs in local bars and clubs. The brothers played under the name The Pacemakers, a band that was part streetwise grit, part raw musical innovation. They backed local singers, jammed at community dances, and absorbed every influence they could from Curtis Mayfield's smooth soul to the tight grooves of Motown house band, the Funk Brothers. By 1970, the Pacemakers had earned a reputation as one of Cincinnati's most reliable and exciting live acts. That reputation put them on the radar of the hardest-working man in show business, James Brown. Brown, already a legend by this point, had just lost his famed backing group, the Famous Flames, and needed fresh blood to keep his relentless touring schedule on track. After seeing the Pacemakers perform, Brown hired them immediately, transforming them into the JBs.
What about James Brown and the work you did with James Brown?
Yes, definitely. I worked at King Records, which, as you know, that's where James Brown did his recordings and stuff at. And that's where we got introduced. And
working for James Brown was like enrolling in the most intense, unforgiving music conservatory in the world. Brown's shows demanded split-second timing, rigid discipline, and absolute deference to his authority. Rehearsals could run for hours, and fines were issued on the spot for mistakes, missed cues, or even failing to wear the proper stage attire. Bootsy later recalled that the discipline was invaluable for his musicianship, but it also clashed with his naturally loose, playful spirit. The breaking point came in 1971, during a European tour. Bootsy wanted to shake up the strict routine of the JBs, so he took LSD before a show, breaking James Brown's strict no drugs rule. Mid-performance, the drug hit him, and Bootsy later said his bass turned into a snake in his hands. He couldn't remember playing a single note. Brown, watching from the side of the stage, noticed something was wrong. After the show, he confronted Bootsy, but Bootsy, still high, laughed instead of apologizing. That was it. He was fired the next day. For Bootsy, getting fired was a shock, but also a strange kind of freedom. The JBs had given him discipline, but he had also felt limited by their rules. Being let go pushed him to explore a different musical world, one where improvisation, experimentation, and pure groove mattered more than strict routines. This journey soon brought him to George Clinton and the Parliament-Funkadelic collective, where he could let his imagination and his bass run completely wild. When Bootsy Collins walked away from James Brown's world of clockwork discipline, he stepped briefly back into Cincinnati life, unsure of his next move. But funk fate didn't leave him idle for long. In 1972, he caught wind of a different kind of band leader, one who valued chaos as much as precision. That band leader was George Clinton, the mastermind behind the sprawling musical universe of Parliament-Funkadelic. P-Funk wasn't a band in the traditional sense. It was a fluid, shape-shifting collective of musicians, singers, and performers who moved between Clinton's two main projects. Parliament favored smooth, radio-friendly R&B grooves, while Funkadelic leaned heavily into psychedelic rock, extended jams, and mind-warping sonic experiments. Clinton's gift was creating an ecosystem where these contrasting styles could cross-pollinate into something entirely new. When Bootsy arrived, Clinton recognized a missing puzzle piece had just fallen into place.
Now you move on to George Clinton and P-Funk, and now your sound is, it's your own sound. Nobody sounds like you.
I found myself.
Bootsy's bass was deep, elastic, and instantly recognizable. His stage presence was magnetic. Clinton encouraged him to be more than a musician. He wanted Bootsy to be a character. This led to the birth of Bootzilla, the world's only rhinestone rock star doll, along with alter egos like Casper the Funky Ghost. These weren't just nicknames, they were living parts of the P-Funk mythology, a theatrical universe as rich as any rock opera. Life inside P-Funk was both a creative playground and a psychedelic roller coaster. Bootsy has admitted that during his early years with Clinton, he took LSD every day for more than 2 years, describing the experience as a 24/7 freak show. After parties often blurred into sound checks, and the band's costumes, spacesuits, feathers, glitter capes looked like they were borrowed from an interstellar circus. The iconic mothership stage prop wasn't just a visual gimmick. It was a symbol of the band's self-contained, utopian funk universe. Musically, Bootsy's arrival helped push P-Funk into its most celebrated era, contributing to landmark albums like Mothership Connection and One Nation Under a Groove. His bass lines didn't just anchor the songs, they danced, bounced, and popped, driving the band's intergalactic grooves. Yet beneath the glitter and the outrageous stagecraft, the seeds of later tensions were already there. As the collective's fame grew, so did the chaos, and Bootsy would eventually see that even the funkiest spaceship can hit turbulence. On stage, Bootsy Collins was the living definition of funk royalty. His smile wide and infectious, his bass slung low like a weapon of groove, his every move a calculated explosion of energy. Sequined hats, star-shaped sunglasses, and suits that looked like they'd been beamed in from another planet screamed unshakable confidence. To the audience, Bootsy wasn't just a musician. He was an intergalactic showman who seemed untouchable. Behind the glasses and glitter, Bootsy Collins managed the intense demands of P-Funk's performances. In a Guardian interview, he described trying to balance the music with the business side. "I was just there to play music." The alter egos, Bootzilla, Casper the Funky Ghost, were central to P-Funk's theatrical shows, helping make the performances more entertaining and memorable. Bootsy also admitted in interviews that he used LSD during his early years with Clinton, which influenced his music and stage persona.
True though that LSD is what kind of like is that why you ended up not working it out with James Brown long term?
Yeah.
Despite the turmoil, Bootsy's professional output remained extraordinary. He was still laying down historic bass lines that would go on to influence generations, still touring the globe, still receiving standing ovations from crowds who saw only the dazzling spectacle. But away from the lights, he was fighting to feel grounded, to reconnect with the quiet human version of himself that had been swallowed up by the glitter, the characters, and the haze of the funk circus. It was a double life, one fueled by applause, the other weighed down by uncertainty, and holding both worlds together was becoming harder with every passing year. P-Funk's elaborate shows, complete with alien landings, spaceships, outrageous costumes, and funk rituals, were designed to feel like one never-ending party. To audiences, it was pure spectacle, a cosmic celebration of sound, style, and freedom. But behind the flashing lights and bass lines that shook the floor, the reality for many musicians was far less glamorous. The pace was relentless. After hours of high-energy performance, the band would often jump straight into travel or recording sessions. Long nights bled into early mornings, with little to no time for real rest or recovery. Life on the road meant constant motion, different cities, different crowds, but the same exhausting cycle. The lifestyle was intoxicating but unsustainable, fueled by the excess and chaos that came to define the P-Funk mythos. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, P-Funk experienced lineup changes. Original members such as Fuzzy Haskins, Calvin Simon, and Grady Thomas left, and new musicians joined. Bootsy remained active in the collective, contributing to recordings and performances, but the band's roster shifted, and legal disputes over the Parliament and Funkadelic names arose. See Wikipedia and Pitchfork coverage. Bootsy continued performing and recording with Clinton, focusing on his music amid these organizational and business changes. By the early 80s, the funk empire was faltering. Record label issues, lawsuits over the Parliament and Funkadelic names, and ballooning expenses made the P-Funk machine unsustainable. Clinton shifted focus to the P-Funk All-Stars, but the golden age was over. For Bootsy, the end came in a more personal and dangerous way. In 1984, while high, he crashed his motorcycle. The accident nearly killed him. Lying in a hospital bed, he realized he didn't need drugs to be Bootsy Collins. The crash became his wake-up call. He stepped back from the chaos, focusing on personal recovery and clarity, slowly rebuilding his life outside the non-stop demands of P-Funk touring. Bootsy Collins and George Clinton shared a complicated relationship over the years. They were musical partners who created some of the most unforgettable funk in history, but behind the scenes, there were tensions and misunderstandings. Despite past disagreements, Bootsy and Clinton found ways to reconnect later in life, coming together for concerts, recording sessions, and special performances that reminded fans of their shared history and creative chemistry. Their reunions were often filled with joy, energy, and a sense of nostalgia. On stage, it was clear that they could still bring out the best in each other. Bootsy's playful bass lines intertwined with Clinton's visionary arrangements, showing that music could bridge gaps and heal old wounds. While the spotlight focused on their performances, the personal dynamics were quieter. Bootsy often chose to highlight the music itself, speaking publicly about rhythm, groove, and the experience of performing rather than dwelling on past conflicts or lingering resentments. Outside of P-Funk, Bootsy also pursued his solo career with dedication, exploring new musical ideas and collaborating with a range of artists. During this time, he devoted energy to mentoring young musicians, sharing stories, techniques, and advice to help the next generation of funk artists succeed. His willingness to teach showed a side of Bootsy that went beyond personal ambition, a desire to give back to the community that had shaped him. Even though there were old tensions, Bootsy approached them with a sense of understanding and forgiveness. He acknowledged that creative partnerships can be challenging and that disagreements are often part of the process. By focusing on music, performance, and mentorship, Bootsy transformed past conflicts into lessons and opportunities. In the end, Bootsy and Clinton's story is a reminder that relationships, even complicated ones, can find reconciliation through shared passion and respect. Music became their common ground, allowing them to celebrate what they built together while moving forward with grace, creativity, and an enduring commitment to funk. In the years that followed, Bootsy carved out a respected solo career, with albums that kept the funk spirit alive, but on his own terms. He also turned his energy toward education, founding the Bootsy Collins Foundation to give kids access to instruments, lessons, and opportunities in music. His later work was defined less by internal feuds and more by sharing knowledge. If he still carried grudges, they no longer defined him. The funk became a gift to pass on, not a battlefield to survive. Bootsy Collins' story is one of creativity and lasting influence. From growing up in Cincinnati to playing with James Brown and P-Funk, and later performing as a solo artist, Bootsy helped shape the sound of funk music. His bass lines were catchy, playful, and full of energy, turning the bass guitar into a leading voice in songs. Every note he played brought joy, fun, and freedom to the music, making funk what it is today. But Bootsy's journey was more than just music. Behind the bright glasses, wild costumes, and fun stage shows, he learned lessons about patience, teamwork, and forgiveness. He had disagreements with bandmates, mentors, and others in the music industry. Yet he always found a way to move forward. These experiences helped him grow and showed that even challenges can teach important lessons. Bootsy also worked hard to help young musicians. Through the Bootsy Collins Foundation, he has supported music education, mentorship, and opportunities for people who might not have a chance otherwise. He shows that a true legacy is not only about fame, but also about helping others follow their dreams while staying true to your own art. In the end, Bootsy's life shows the power of funk not just as music, but as a way of living. His story teaches that joy can exist alongside struggles, that people can forgive, and that music can leave a mark that lasts long after the performance ends. Celebrating Bootsy Collins means celebrating creativity, generosity, and the fun, free spirit that keeps funk alive.